Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the briefing room. I'm your host, Abu Hamza. So far, we have covered the Somali President Hassan Sheikh and a one-year review of his six-pillar policy. We have looked at those who govern us and how they represent us. But with the development of any community, of any nation, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? How are we contributing to this development ourselves through our efforts? Are we doing a good job of it, or can we do better? What should we avoid, and what should we be doing instead? And this is where active citizenship comes into play. But what does active citizenship mean? There's no universally accepted definition of active citizenship, and no standard model of what an active citizen is. But there's a general agreement that it refers to the involvement of individuals in public life and affairs, and this can take place at local, national, and international levels. The term is used especially at local level to refer to citizens who become actively involved in the life of their communities, tackling problems or bringing about change or resisting unwanted change. The arenas for active citizens to participate in are generally seen as one of two things. The first one is civil participation, which is about people getting involved with each other to pursue their own goals and interests. This can include participation in residents' associations, sports clubs, faith groups, for example. The other is civic engagement. This arena tends to refer to the more formal route of public participation in the process of governance. This could be through user panels, citizens' juries, citizen governors, non-executive board members, advisory groups, and community change organizations. You see, the active citizens are those who develop the skills, knowledge, and understanding to be able to make informed decisions about their communities and workplaces with the aim of improving the quality of life in these. At a national level, it can move from voting to being involved in campaigning pressure groups to being a member of a political party. At international level, the global active citizen may be involved in movements to promote sustainability or fair trade, to reduce poverty or eliminate slavery. An active citizen is not necessarily a good citizen, in the sense that they follow the rules or behave in a certain way. An active citizen may challenge the rules or existing structures, although they should generally stay within the bounds of democratic processes and not become involved in violent acts. There's a general set of values and dispositions that can be associated with active democratic citizenship, including respect for justice, democracy, and the rule of law, openness, tolerance, the courage to defend a point of view, and a willingness to listen to, work with, and stand up for others. This does not mean that we have to compare an active citizen's personal life with their public efforts. We tend to automatically judge a person's community efforts if we disagree with the things that they do in their personal life. We need to learn how to separate the two. I can disagree with what you do in your personal life, but I will still work with you on issues that affect our community. This doesn't mean that I condone the things you do or what you believe in, but just like I would not mind working together with a non-Somali person who does the same things. In the same way, I wouldn't mind working with a Somali brother or sister who's willing to join the efforts to improve our people. This is because active citizenship is a form of self-empowerment. It is us coming to grips with what happens in public life, developing the knowledge, understanding, critical thinking, and independent judgment of issues that affect us on the local, national, and even on global levels. It implies action and empowerment, acquiring the knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and being able and willing to use them to make decisions and take action individually and collectively. And this is what we need. We need to really increase our participation in the community, which could be through the involvement in a voluntary activity or engaging with local government agencies. We need to ensure our people are empowered to play the part in the decisions and processes that affect them, particularly in the arenas of public policy and services. We need to foster the type of knowledge and understanding of the political, social, and economic context of their participation so that they can make informed decisions. We need to empower our people to be able to challenge policies and actions and existing structures on the basis of principles such as equality, inclusiveness, diversity, and social justice. So how will this benefit us? It can help us rekindle the feeling of community, the feeling of a national identity, the feeling of Qarannimo, of Somalinimo, through working together. It can help us encourage problem solving on a community level which many of us do through social and political movements, and it can help strengthen us in the cities that we live in by engaging with local governments to improve standards of education, improve housing, and the fight for equality and justice for our communities. We need to understand that active citizenship is the key to building a strong democracy back home, as active citizenship places the power with the people. This could assist us in developing some sort of civic culture, which is the ability of most citizens to accept authority from the state and increase participation in civic duties. It is also the ability of most citizens to challenge the authority from the state through democratic and legal processes. This is why it's so important for us to be involved in the formation of our judiciary, legislative, and executive branches of our governments. Especially back home, we have an unprecedented opportunity here that we really need to make use of. Not many other nations have this chance. This is our chance to build something new, from scratch in some areas, and in other areas, the chance to be able to build on improved processes and institutions which already exist. We need to cut out the bad weeds, challenge policies that are not in our collective interests, and hold ourselves as well as our governments to account. Active citizenship begins with understanding more about one's local surroundings and history. We should encourage our brothers and sisters to delve deeply into the culture and historical context of our own community. Once we understand this on a deeper level, perhaps then we can begin to understand the importance of our involvement. It was Plato who once said, "One of the penalties for refusing to participate in politics is that you end up being governed by your inferiors." Which begs the following question. How do we balance the need for active citizenship wherever we are in the world and our nation back home? We have a responsibility to our people in our homeland as well as to our people in the host nations we live in. We are constantly fighting a battle on all fronts, so we really don't have time to fight each other. So what can we do? Well, first of all, become a registered voter. You ever wonder why politicians listen so little to us? It's because they don't feel that we have a big enough impact on their jobs. When it comes to votes, they don't see us as voting for them or anyone else for that matter, and thus they don't feel obliged to take up our issues. They represent the interests of their constituents, yes, but the issues that they take up and fight for in Parliament are those issues that matter to those who voted for them, because they are the ones that they are accountable to. We need to start using the power of the ballot. We need to begin lobbying MPs and campaigning, organizing community efforts and supporting such efforts. The importance of understanding our rights and utilizing them, such as the Freedom of Information Act, for example, is a start. The Somali community is lagging behind in our lack of influence in our own affairs. We need to be taken seriously as an electorate if we are ever going to tackle the issues that affect us deeply, yet we are silent on, such as incarcerated youth, drug abuse, poor educational attainment, broken families, gang crime, poverty, and social mobility. The Somali community is a long way from being participants in the democratic process. Most people in the Somali community find many other things to do with their time. That's not to say that we should all be involved with politics all the time, but it does highlight the importance of voicing our concerns and putting pressure on the government to be able to address these. And one of the ways we can do that is through effective lobbying. This involves individuals and organizations putting pressure on individuals within decision-making bodies with the aim of influencing legislation. It is sometimes painted as a dirty word, but it really isn't. NGOs and interest groups representing many different sections of society and political views seek to promote their particular priorities. So why can't we do the same? How effective is the lobbying that we can do? That depends. It depends on the degree of access to decision makers. Those groups whose views are close to the positions of those who are making the decisions may be able to rely on informal channels, whereas less mainstream causes and interests will need to resort to more public methods, such as letter writing and petitioning. Organizations with a financial interest in influencing policy might choose to make donations to political parties. Ultimately, it's up to us to ensure that we know both our rights as citizens as well as our duties as citizens. And whilst I'm not really a fan of many things American, The following two quotes are good examples of the ideology behind the rights and duties of a citizen. The American Declaration of Independence of 1776 states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed." Deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. That is us. We are the ones who put them in power through our votes, and they are ultimately accountable to us, regardless of the democratic country we live in. It was the previously assassinated President John F. Kennedy who said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." This is as true today as it was when he said it over 50 years ago. This begins with the importance of understanding political structures, social issues, and regional complexities. We have to figure out what role we can play in the development of our nation, what role we can play in the reconciliation of our people. We have struggled, we have suffered, but what can we do to move forward together? How can we contribute to the economy? Do we invest in local businesses that already exist? Do we fill the gaps in the market for which there is demand? This remains a balancing act because we have to be careful when we do this. We like to sometimes think of ourselves as saviors. But are we saving our nation by returning? Or once we return, do we then realize that it's our nation that is saving us? Are we benefiting the nation or are we crippling its development? Is the return of diaspora members robbing the locals of a chance to grow within that development? These are all important questions to raise when considering our role back home. The same principles apply though. We have to continue to get involved with the democratic process. We have to continue to lobby. We have to continue to keep our leaders and representatives to account. We have to understand something I call collective individualism. Our individual efforts should work towards a collective impact. The efforts of our organizations should work towards the collective interests of the wider community. But are they really? Are our organizations doing an effective job of promoting active citizenship? I don't necessarily want to look too deep into the organization, but rather to the individuals leading and working with those organizations. Are we all active citizens in that arena? Are we getting involved with these organizations enough? We socialize with each other all the time, but are we working together enough within and between these organizations? Or do we hide behind the smokescreen of the organization as an entity to justify our lack of working together? I don't know. We'll have a look at it. Stay tuned as we look at this right after the break. Grassroots organizations face many problems. They are constantly looking for funding. There's constant competition for resources. But not only that, the biggest competition is for the target audience. Let's be honest. We are all targeting the same people, the same sections of the Somali community. Predominantly, the youth. When we try to raise money for projects, when we are fundraising for charitable causes, we always go towards the same target audience. The Somali community has a limit to what they can give in terms of money, time, and effort. There's a lack of creativity. Are we missing out on the real solution? First of all, if we look at the number of registered UK Somali organizations, there are over 320. Over 320 Somali community organizations are registered with the Charity Commission. If each of these tackled a specific issue, surely we should be having less issues by now, right? What we have to look at is, how many of these are briefcase NGOs? How many of these are hurting the credibility of our community? We have to start questioning our sincerity to create change. We need to start focusing on impressing those who are in charge of the bid for funding, and we need to start focusing on impressing our own people and serving the needs of the communities. We need to begin finding a larger, more cohesive strategy for tackling our problems by looking at the bigger picture. In my opinion, our biggest obstacle is the lack of coordination. Why are we not working together? Why are we not looking at what services are already provided by others and either work with them to strengthen those services or work with them to fill in any service provision gaps? And when will we start creating democratically led organizations? Should we not be able to choose those who claim to represent us in the media during these high profile and sometimes behind closed doors meetings? Should we not be able to place power with people that we believe would serve our best interests? How can we actively change this? Oh, are you a volunteer? If not, become. Volunteer your advice, your expertise, your connections and contacts. And if you're a civil society leader, make sure that you encourage progression amongst the ranks. Foster a culture of collaboration with like-minded organizations. Begin conducting research as a core part of your project to ensure you become experts of your field. We need to begin by mapping our services locally, regionally, nationally and internationally. Using globalization to benefit us, utilize the strengths of information sharing and best practice tips. Offering each other advice and guidance through strong networks, and avoid creating new organizations, but instead, focus on joining and supporting existing ones. Call out to those interested in developing a similar idea. Could we make this work? Let's look at the famine in the Somali Peninsula in 2011. Despite the immense challenges our community faces, the 2011 Somali famine highlighted the potential we possess, particularly in the diaspora. The diaspora across the globe became more mobilized, organized and energized than ever before. Grassroots movements propped up all over small towns and communities. Students and community activists began coming together to strategize. Social networks were buzzing with hashtags and likes. Mothers were gathering with their friends to raise donations and setting up meetings with local elders to organize. We had a clear goal: to feed our people and help them through this crisis. Each of us stepped up without fear and we sacrificed. We sacrificed our time, sleep, energy, money, intellect and power to support our people. We had a vision, a clear one, and it united us and brought us together. Despite our tribal affiliations, despite our political and social affiliations, despite all of our differences, we came together and we made a difference. Looking back on initiatives such as the Feed Somalia campaign, an effort that began on Twitter, we can see how one small effort to unite the youth of the Somali diaspora can have a major impact. By tweeting the hashtag Feed Somalia, they were able to rally youth across the globe to set up Somali youth drought relief committees and engaged heavily in media and other social networking efforts to raise funds. Just looking at the efforts of one team in Ottawa, a group of young campaigners were able to raise $27,000 from one event alone. They were attracting media attention from the likes of CBS News and Al Jazeera's The Stream. The success of what started off as an online campaign is clearly evident. The campaigners' tireless efforts to collect funds from friends, colleagues and strangers demonstrates the capabilities we possess and just how much we can accomplish in such a short amount of space. So the question is, can we return this momentum? Can we return to that height of interest in our social ailments? Are we willing to sacrifice our time, personal interests and agendas to once again work together on a larger scale? For a moment in time, we stopped viewing each other as competition, as the enemy, with hesitation and animosity, and instead, we reached out for the hands of our fellow brothers and sisters and made a commitment to each other, to those who were suffering and to God Almighty. So, will we ever be able to return to this scenario? Ultimately, that choice lies with you and me. What are we willing to sacrifice for our people in our country? Will we hold those in leadership to account? Praise them for their achievements, support them in their struggle, and guide them through their mistakes? Are we willing to carry a piece of the burden of a burnt nation so that together we can begin healing once and for all? The answer depends on you and me. The future of our people lies in our hands. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Ra'd says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. He will not change the condition of a people until they change themselves. Our solutions are buried within ourselves, so is it not time we change yet? What will it take? What will be our driving force? What do we need to do? We need to get together as individuals, as brothers and sisters, cousins, mothers and fathers, as organizations that operate in the diaspora, as well as those that operate back home. We need to do research on our own community instead of letting others do research on us. We need to know exactly how many of those in our community are studying. How many are studying law? How many are studying medicine? How many are studying international relations, politics? We need to be able to know exactly what our human resources are. where our strengths lie. We need to know how many lawyers we have, how many accountants we have, how many project managers we have. We need to understand where each person's strengths can complement the gaps that need to be filled within our community. We need to know how many of our people are in prison. How many of our people are currently in danger of being deported? How many of our people need assistance with immigration issues? We need to know how many business owners we have and what services they provide. We need to know exactly what our community needs so we can address these. We need to be able to rely on ourselves before we can begin to rely on others. I truly believe we can save ourselves. I really do. But we have to put our minds to it. And one thing we really need is to understand that we need to not only fight against a specific organization or against a government or against a topic. It's become too easy to get our people fired up once we give them an enemy to be against. I mean, examples of this are in our recent history as well as if we go back a little further. The Dervish resistance was so successful because they had an enemy, the invaders. SYL was so successful because they were fighting against those who colonized us. SNM was so successful because they were fighting against those who oppressed them. The Union of Islamic Courts was so successful because they were fighting against all the warlords. Of course, there were many more factors that made these movements so successful. But public opinion was swayed so strongly because we were given an enemy. The same applied to the killing of Somalis in South Africa and the xenophobia. Somalis all over the world cried out against it. We need to learn how to not only unite against issues, but we also need to learn how to fight for a cause we believe in, a cause that benefits us all. And that, my brothers and sisters, is something we have to work towards together. We have to come up with a common vision that benefits us all, that we can each work towards in our own ways, using our strengths, our knowledge, our expertise. We have to build on each other instead of breaking each other down. The crab theory is that when a bunch of crabs are boiled alive in a pan, they are filled to the brim. And should they choose, they can climb out. But every time a crab tries to climb out, another crab pulls him down. And it happens each time. They could all climb out should they allow each other. And even if a few don't make it, the majority of them would. But they pull each other down and they are boiled together. A lot of the times, we're pretty much the same. We don't build each other up. We break each other down. We are our greatest strength and each other's biggest weakness. As active citizens, we need to really move away from these practices. You see a project you think could be better? Help improve it. You see an organization that could do better outreach? Help them expand. We have to develop and grow as a community, as a nation. We have to get involved in every aspect of society. In the education sector, in the socio-economic sector, in the political arenas, in the health sector, in the development sector. We are in need everywhere. Our people need us to stop bickering and take action. This is back home as well as in our host nations. I know many of our parents had their suitcases packed and ready, but we have to accept that many of us are here to stay in our host nations. We have to develop our communities in these host nations. Democracies need active, informed, and responsible citizens. Citizens who are willing and able to take responsibility for themselves and their communities and contribute to the political process. We have to re-educate ourselves to be better, to be stronger, to be more active, and to ensure that we pass this down to our children, our children's children. And we can only do this together. If I was going to give someone some advice on how to get involved, it would probably be pick a cause and stick to it. Pick an issue and stick to it. I know it isn't easy because we are passionate about so many of the causes out there and the issues we have to improve. But we are really not helping ourselves or others by overstretching and spreading ourselves so thin by taking on too much. We then become ineffective in everything we do. If we pick a cause and put all of our efforts into it, we can become more effective inshallah. If we each focus on our strengths and apply to the areas that we can have the biggest impact, we will probably be leaps and bounds ahead of where we are now. We have to reorganize our human resources in a manner that is the most effective for our society. If you've ever heard about the 80-20 rule, you'll know that it can be applied to most situations. And it's true. 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. 80% of the problems are caused by 20% of society, approximately. And this is why people burn out. They are tired because they have taken on too much. If everyone did their fair share of the work, it would become a lot easier on everyone else. The load would be easy enough to carry for everyone. So I hope you all get involved in the causes you are passionate about and feel that you can most effectively contribute to. I hope you make it easier for everyone else who's already involved. I pray that we all become active citizens and become beacons of light for the current generations and many of the next generations to come. That was it for tonight. Thank you for watching The Briefing Room. I'm your host, Abu Hamza, and make sure to tune in next time.